You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. Neville Goddard spoke these words not as poetry but as precision. Now ask yourself, what are you being right now? Because you may not realize it yet, but chasing money, constantly seeking it, is often the very act that pushes it away. We live in a world that rewards striving. We're told to grind, to hustle, to go after the life we want. But Neville invites us to a higher truth, that wealth is not something to be chased. It is something to be assumed. If you've ever said, I just need a little more money, or, when I finally get the raise, then I'll feel secure, you're not alone. But those words reveal the hidden cause behind the delay. They are confessions of lack, not of wealth. Neville did not begin with lack. He always began with this divine truth. You already are what you seek. All states of consciousness exist now. Poverty is a state. Wealth is a state. You do not need to get to wealth, you need only enter it. Just as a person can walk into a room, you can walk into the state of wealth. No one else needs to give it to you. No circumstance needs to shift first. Only you. In this journey we're about to take together, I will give you the formula. A way of seeing, speaking, and feeling that will make wealth feel natural to you. Because when you stop chasing money and start being the wealth you desire, something remarkable happens. It begins to come to you. This is not about magical thinking or blind belief. This is about conscious assumption, feeling the reality of wealth so vividly, so sincerely, that your world has no choice but to reflect it. So let me ask you now, what would it feel like to no longer need money, because you already feel wealthy? By the end of this video, you'll understand how to claim that state, not by wishing, not by working harder, but by knowing, deeply and quietly, that the source of wealth lives within you. Divine truth, you already are what you seek. Let us begin where Neville Goddard would begin, not with effort, but with identity, not with chasing, but with truth. And the truth is this, you already are what you seek. This may sound poetic, even evasive to the logical mind trained to measure reality by outer signs, but in the language of consciousness, it is a fundamental law. All states of being, whether called wealth, poverty, freedom, success, exist now. You do not climb toward wealth, you identify with it. The outer world is nothing but a mirror, a projection of your inner assumptions. If you assume lack, even subtly, even unconsciously, your world must reflect it, not because the world is cruel, but because it is obedient. Neville wrote, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Now let's pause here, not to nod in agreement, but to investigate. What is your actual lived conception of yourself when it comes to money? Not the image you show others, not the affirmation you write 10 times in a notebook, but the unspoken assumption beneath your breath, that place you return to when you're uncertain, when the bill arrives, when the deal falls through. Is it, I am the source of wealth? Or is it, I hope it works out? There is no judgment here, only awareness. For awareness itself is the beginning of transformation. Neville taught that everything begins with a state, and a state is not just a thought, it is a felt reality. It is a home you live in, whether you realize it or not. Now consider this. If you continue to occupy the state of seeker, the universe must relate to you as someone still seeking. The money you desire remains out ahead of you, close enough to keep hope alive, but always slightly beyond reach. Why? Because you have not yet assumed it is yours. You are like an actor waiting for someone to hand you the costume before stepping into the role. But in this divine play, you must wear the identity first. You must declare the role is yours before the audience applauds. Let's go deeper with a metaphor Neville often used, though rarely fully understood. Picture your consciousness as an infinite wardrobe. Inside it hang the garments of every conceivable reality. Wealth is a garment. So is lack. You don't need to make a new outfit. You simply select the one you desire and wear it in feeling. Not by wishing, not by scripting, but by inwardly accepting, this is who I am. When you do this sincerely, when you feel yourself clothed in the energy of abundance without anxiety, without grasping, something profound happens. The world begins to move around you, reflecting the identity you've chosen. And yet, most remain naked in imagination, hoping the outer world will dress them first. Neville said, man moves in a world that is nothing more than his consciousness objectified. If you are not seeing wealth, the invitation is not to work harder, but to look within and ask, what state am I living from? This is the divine truth that unravels all effort. You already are what you seek. The question is no longer, how do I get money? It becomes, am I willing to accept that wealth is already mine, within me, waiting to be assumed? So, I ask you to consider now, if wealth were not something to earn, but something to remember, what would that change for you right here in this moment? Let that question echo in the silence, because that silence is not emptiness, it is potential, waiting to be claimed. We now step into the sacred chamber where reality is shaped, not in the bank, not on the stock exchange, but in the imagination. Neville Goddard called this inner realm the workshop of creation. Imagination, he taught, is not a passive daydream. It is the spiritual act of creation. It is the invisible hand behind every visible outcome. And yet, most people use it unconsciously, imagining problems, rehearsing fears, projecting limitations, and then calling the results life. But life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Neville said, "Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us, and we in him." The eternal body of man is the imagination. That is God himself. Now consider this. Every dollar you've earned, every opportunity you've walked into, every financial outcome you've ever experienced was first imagined, either clearly or chaotically. The outer merely echoes the image held within. But what if you could enter the workshop consciously? Imagine for a moment a painter. She has no canvas, no brush, no physical tools, yet inwardly, she is painting landscapes rich with color, detail, emotion. She sees the final image before it appears, and because she sees it, the world will eventually meet her vision with form. This is you. This is all of us. You are the artist of your inner world. So the real question is, what images are you painting when you're not paying attention? When you worry about your bank account, that is imagination at work. When you imagine being turned down for a loan, struggling to make rent, or always being behind, these are not random thoughts. They are brushstrokes on the canvas of consciousness, and the law does not discriminate. It simply reflects. Neville made it clear. The world imagines itself into being. Your life is not the result of effort, but of imaginative activity repeated and believed. So how do we enter this inner workshop and begin to create consciously? First, we slow down. Imagination doesn't respond well to force. It responds to stillness, clarity, and emotion. Close your eyes and see, not with strain but with surrender. Don't imagine yourself getting money. Imagine yourself having it, not one day, now. Feel the weight of a full wallet in your hand. Feel the calm that comes with knowing everything is paid. Feel the smile that rises when you give freely from abundance. These are not idle fantasies. They are seed moments. And what you sow in imagination, you will reap in time and space. Neville reminded us, dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment. The world doesn't change first. The world follows. And the part of you the world is following is not your words. It's your inner picture. So I invite you now to ask, not what do I want, but what am I consistently imagining? What scenes do I replay? What emotions do I rehearse? Because that inner script, that private film playing in the quiet of your mind, is not a fantasy. It is your future rehearsing itself. Imagination is not a tool you use. It is the power you are. And once you reclaim it, the outer world becomes the stage that mirrors your vision. This is not about working harder. It is about imagining better. Now that you've begun to see the imagination as your true place of creation, we arrive at the core of this teaching, what some might call the money formula, though it reaches far beyond finance. It is this: when you no longer seek, you find. Neville Goddard taught that seeking implies separation. The more you chase something, the more you affirm you do not have it. The more you say, I need money, the more you declare, I lack money. And the law responds faithfully, not to your words, but to the feeling behind them. Desire is not the problem. In fact, Neville said that desire is a divine gift. It's the map to your next state of consciousness. But if desire is not fulfilled within, it turns into longing, and longing into lack. So the key is not to deny desire, but to complete it in imagination, to live in the end, to feel as if it is already so. He wrote, live as though your wish were already fulfilled, and treat it as a reality. This is the essence of the law of assumption. You assume the state of the wish fulfilled, not someday, not after something happens, but now. And in doing so, your inner world becomes the magnet for the outer. Let's put this into language your body can feel. Neville taught not only with theory, but with phrases that could carry you into the state itself. Here are 3 variations of the wealth assumption formula. 1. I am already all that I desire to be. This statement removes waiting from the equation. You're not asking, you're acknowledging. You are speaking from the mountaintop, not to it. 2. It's done. I feel it. I trust it. There's no tension in this phrase, only peace. It carries the quiet confidence of someone who no longer negotiates with doubt. 3. Money flows to me because I am the source of wealth. This flips the common idea that money comes from jobs, clients, or luck. It returns the power to its rightful place, within you. Now, these are not magic spells. They are doorways into identity. To repeat them without feeling is like knocking on a door you don't believe will open. But to feel them as real, that's where the alchemy begins. When you speak these phrases, speak from the state, not to get to it, but as if you're already in it. What would your tone be if these words were true? How would your body respond if it already knew they were real? Pause and feel it. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath slow. Let yourself become the one who has already received. This is the formula. Stillness. Knowing. Assumption. It is not effort that produces wealth. It is alignment. Neville often said, "Be still and know that I am God." That is not a command to be religious. It's an instruction to identify with the source. The I am in you is the creator. And when you dwell in the state of wealth, deeply, quietly, sincerely, the outer must mirror the inner. So the next time you feel tempted to say, "I need more money," stop. Instead, remember who you are and say, "I am the wealth I was chasing." Let the words rise from that knowing. You are not calling something into being. You are calling yourself back to the truth, because when you no longer seek wealth, you find that you were it all along. Before we move on, take a second and check the pinned comment below. If you've ever caught yourself saying, "I need more money," or "I hope things improve soon," what's waiting there will speak directly to that mindset. It's not about chasing more. It's about recognizing what you've been assuming all along. Look at it with fresh eyes, then come back. We're about to get into what actually sustains the state of wealth. If there is one principle Neville Goddard returned to again and again, it is this: there is no one to change but self. Not your employer, not your economy, not the people around you, only your state of consciousness. You see, most of us were taught to chase results, fix the external, make more calls, adjust the strategy. But in Neville's world and in truth, the outer is simply a shadow. It cannot change until the light that casts it changes. That light is your state. Neville referred to states not as moods or fleeting emotions, but as complete psychological positions, identities you step into, live from, and therefore express. He taught that the world is a mirror reflecting not what you consciously want, but the state you dwell in most persistently. So if your state is "I don't have enough," the world must echo that. If your state is "I am always supported," the world must echo that too. The beauty of this truth is that you are never stuck. No matter how fixed a circumstance may seem, states are always movable. You can shift them at any time, not by force, but by recognition. Neville wrote, "States are spiritual and can be entered at any moment." This means that even if your bank account today reads 0, you are still free to enter the state of wealth. Not by denying what is, but by choosing to dwell in what can be made real through assumption. So how do you shift states? It begins with awareness. Notice the inner commentary you're living from. Do you often say to yourself, "I can't afford that," or "things never work out for me"? Those aren't harmless thoughts. They are declarations of state. They are the script of the self you're being. Now imagine instead living from a different script. I am always provided for. Everything I spend returns to me multiplied. I move through the world as one who is financially free. This isn't about repeating lines you don't believe. It's about feeling your way into a different state, letting the feeling carry you like stepping into warm water. No need to convince yourself. Just enter it. You may ask, but what if my outer reality doesn't match? That is precisely the point. The state precedes the evidence. Neville said, "Your assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact." The outer world is never the starting point. It is the after effect. The moment you shift within, the universe begins rearranging itself. Not always instantly, but faithfully. So I ask you now, what state have you made your home? And is it the one you truly desire to live in? Because this is the only work, not to change the world, but to change the self that the world reflects. And when you do, you won't have to chase results. They'll begin arriving as familiar echoes of the state you now embody. If you want to understand why some people seem to receive with ease while others strive endlessly with little reward, it comes down to one word: assumption. Not wish, not hope, not effort, but assumption. Neville Goddard considered assumption the engine of manifestation, the silent, creative force that determines what you experience. To assume something is not to force it. It is not even to try to believe it. It is to yield to it with such inward certainty that your world must conform. He said, "You do not have to force the manifestation. You only have to yield to the assumption." This statement carries more power than an entire library of techniques. Why? Because it speaks to the nature of consciousness itself, that the world is a mirror of your deeply held beliefs, and those beliefs are shaped not by effort, but by what you accept as true for you. Now let's make this real. You may be saying affirmations every morning, scripting your ideal life, visualizing success, and yet still feel anxious, still doubt, still chase. Why? Because unless your inner assumption has shifted, the outer rituals remain cosmetic. They may soothe you temporarily, but they do not transform. Neville taught that your deepest assumptions are always creating. You can say, "I am wealthy," but if beneath that you feel, "This isn't working," the world listens to the feeling, not the phrase. This is the quiet paradox. True power doesn't come from how much you say something. It comes from how deeply you believe it's already true. Let's slow this down. Assumption is not intensity. It is not aggression. It is surrender. It is quietly saying, "It is done," and living as though it is. Imagine a person who has just received news that their financial situation is fully resolved. No debt, steady income, overflow, security. What would their body do? How would their shoulders rest? What would their breath feel like? They would relax. They would move with ease. They wouldn't look for proof because they already have it. That is the energy of assumption. Now here's the secret. You can enter that energy before the outer proof arrives. And when you do, when you live from that inner peace, the outer must eventually take shape to match it. Neville explained that the state you occupy determines the reality you experience. The world cannot help but mirror back your dominant inner feeling. He said, "To assume a new concept of self is to advance toward that self. This is not a mental game. It is an inner posture. It is the decision to dwell in the end of your desire. Not because you see it, but because you know it is already so in the unseen. This is where assumption becomes divine. It is not about controlling reality. It is about cooperating with the higher law that governs all life. The law that says, as within, so without." Neville often emphasized the importance of the state just before sleep. Why? Because in that moment, when the conscious mind is yielding to the subconscious, the veil is thin, and the subconscious does not argue. It does not analyze or evaluate. It simply accepts what is felt as true and begins moving reality to reflect it. He taught, all transformation begins with an intense burning desire to be transformed. Then you must make your future dream a present fact. You do this by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. What does that mean practically? It means that instead of falling asleep worrying about bills or wondering how you'll make ends meet, you create a scene, internal, emotional, vivid, where the problem is resolved. Not how it was solved, just the feeling that it has been. Imagine lying in bed, your body relaxed, your mind gently sinking, and as you drift you repeat softly, "It's done. I feel it. I trust it." No fanfare, no resistance, just quiet knowing. Feel what it would feel like to live from that state, no longer seeking, no longer doubting, just being. Even 30 seconds in this state, if fully felt, is more effective than hours of mental strain. Because the law doesn't respond to time, it responds to assumption. Neville reminded us again and again that assumption is the path of least resistance. It is not struggle, it is alignment. It's the deep inner yes to the reality you choose. So let's ask the deeper question. If you truly believed your financial transformation had already occurred, what would you stop doing? What would you stop fearing? And how would you begin to carry yourself today? This is not about pretending. Pretending still implies it's not real. This is about accepting, in silence and confidence, that your chosen state is already yours, and then living accordingly, not out of desperation, but out of identity. When you understand this, you'll stop measuring progress by outer signs. You'll stop needing reassurance because assumption makes the inner state its own evidence. You don't need to convince the world. You need only to dwell in the feeling of wealth, calmly, persistently, faithfully, because the world is not deciding for you. It is responding to you. And when you learn to assume quietly, consistently, and sincerely, wealth no longer becomes something you chase. It becomes something that flows to meet you, as a reflection of who you already are. There is a moment, quiet, inward, and often overlooked, when the entire journey of manifestation reaches its point of completion. It is not when the money arrives. It is not when the external result appears. It is when you accept the state you have chosen as already true. This is the final key in Neville Goddard's teaching, the completion of the loop, the circle of fulfillment. You begin with desire, an inner stirring, often misunderstood as lack, but actually a divine nudge pointing you toward the next state of being. Then you move through imagination, where you form the image of what it feels like to have it already. Then comes assumption, where you adopt the state as your inner identity. But none of this becomes living truth until you do the one thing that seems simple, but is often the most powerful: accept. Neville taught that acceptance is creation, not passive resignation, not giving up, but choosing, with finality and faith, that what you have imagined is now your reality. This inner acceptance closes the circuit. It ends the cycle of seeking. He wrote, "To be conscious of being is to be." So many people get caught in a loop not because they are imagining incorrectly, but because they never accept the reality they have imagined. They continue to wait for outer confirmation before they believe. But belief is not something that follows manifestation. It is the cause of it. And this belief must not only be intellectual, it must feel natural. Neville said, "The ideal you seek and hope to attain will not manifest itself, will not be realized by you, until you have imagined that you are already that ideal. Until it feels as normal to say, 'I am wealthy,' as it once did to say, 'I am struggling,' the outer world will continue to reflect the old identity." Now let's explore this deeper. What does acceptance actually feel like? It feels like relief, like no longer needing to ask, seek, or test. It feels like walking into your home at the end of a long day. You do not wonder if you belong there. You simply enter. It is familiar. It is yours. This is the energy of a fulfilled assumption. There is no reaching, no checking, no hoping. Only the still, grounded awareness that says, "It is done." In this state, you stop resisting your present moment. You stop trying to push the river. You realize that your inner world already contains everything you were striving for. And from this stillness, this inner agreement, the world outside begins to shift, not through effort but through reflection. Neville often emphasized that the outer world is not causative. It is responsive. It is not initiating your experience. It is mirroring your inner movements. He said, "The world is a mirror, forever reflecting what you are doing within yourself." When you accept your wealth internally, you no longer ask, "When will it show up?" You no longer speak to the universe from the voice of desperation. You speak from completion. You speak as the version of yourself who is already living the fulfilled life. And as you do, you become magnetic, not to the outcome you want, but to the state of being that draws that outcome effortlessly. This is what I call living from the end, not living toward it, not wishing, but from it. So how do you enter this final phase, this sacred state of acceptance? First, notice where you are still negotiating with life. Where are you saying, "If this happens, then I'll believe"? That condition holds you in suspension. You are delaying the manifestation by refusing to step fully into the identity of fulfillment. Instead, declare it, assume it, and most importantly, accept it. Speak the phrase, "This is who I am now," not with arrogance, but with clarity, not with force, but with faith, and let yourself live from that space, not just in moments of meditation or affirmation, but in daily life, in how you walk, how you speak, how you interpret what happens around you. Neville taught, man must persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it assumes the feeling of reality. That is not a rigid act. It is a gentle return, again and again, to the state of being that already holds what you were seeking. The circle of fulfillment is this: you have desired, you have imagined, you have assumed. Now you must accept, and when you do, when you no longer look to the outer world to reassure you, but let your inner world become the authority, something shifts. You become peaceful, you become powerful, you become the source. And wealth? It no longer feels distant, it feels natural, because you are no longer becoming, you are being. This is the secret Neville always pointed to. Not a technique, but a truth. That the state you accept as real is real. And the moment you cease resisting what you've already imagined, the world aligns to reflect your conviction. So I leave you with this. Are you still waiting for wealth to arrive? Or are you now ready to accept that it is already yours? The circle is complete. Let it be so. Conclusion. You are the cause. You've seen something tonight, something you may have sensed for years but never fully claimed. That the source of wealth is not outside of you. It never was. It is not in the economy, your job, your clients, your family, or your circumstances. It is within you, entirely. Neville Goddard did not teach us how to chase outcomes. He taught us how to embody causes. He said that every man is the operant power, that what we assume is true in consciousness will, without fail, express itself in the world, not because we wish it into being, but because we are it. Now let's be honest. Most of us have been conditioned to measure our lives by what we can see, touch, and count. When the account balance rises, we feel safe. When it dips, we panic. We believe the outer world tells us who we are, but Neville taught that this is backwards. The outer world does not define you. It reflects you. And so if you see lack, if you experience scarcity, it is not punishment. It is evidence of an inner state, often accepted unconsciously, that has become your dominant vibration. But this is not cause for guilt. It is a reason for power. Because the moment you recognize the source is within, you are no longer waiting. You are choosing. Neville said, consciousness is the only reality. This is not just philosophy. It is mechanics. The state you consistently occupy through your thoughts, your feelings, and your assumptions becomes the blueprint your world must follow. Not occasionally, not randomly, but always. So if you've been chasing wealth, waiting for life to reward your efforts, wondering when things will change, this is your reminder. You are the one who must change, not the world. But this change is not external. You don't need to move mountains. You only need to shift into the inner state of already having what you once thought you needed to earn. This is not imagination as fantasy. It is imagination as fact, when felt as real. You have learned how to stop asking for what is already yours. You have been shown that the key is not more effort, but more stillness. Not more trying, but more assuming. There is nothing passive about this. To assume a new identity with conviction and hold it, even when the senses deny it, is the most powerful act you can perform. And so the question remains, will you return to the old habit of reacting to appearances, or will you take what you've heard and allow it to become the foundation of how you live? You do not need anyone's permission to be wealthy. You do not need a sign. You only need to accept within yourself that this is already who you are. Not someday, not later, now. Speak from that place. Act from that place. Rest in that place. And you will watch often with quiet surprise as the world around you begins to shift, softly, naturally, almost inevitably, to reflect the new state you've chosen. Neville said, "The world is yourself pushed out. So what do you want the world to reveal tomorrow? What new assumption are you ready to make real? Not in theory, but in your daily state of being. This is where theory ends and embodiment begins. And if you're ready to live this, not just understand it intellectually, but test it in your own life, then take one small action now. Check the pinned comment. That's it. There's something there for those who are truly ready to see themselves as the source. Not everyone will notice it. Not everyone will act on it. But if you felt even a flicker of recognition during this message, if something in you knows it's time to stop chasing and start assuming, then you'll know why the pinned comment is worth your attention. Because sometimes, a single next step is all it takes to shift from wishing to knowing. And when you know, the world will follow. It always does.